In a flooded city, a boy with nothing rescued a girl who had everything. But what began as a moment of courage turned into a story that would change two families forever. Stay with us, this is one you won't forget. If you love powerful emotional stories, make sure you subscribe to Black Inside USA and turn on notifications so you never miss our next inspiring tale. The storm that started it all. The sky over Lakewood City had been heavy all morning, thick with the kind of clouds that seemed ready to break at any moment. By afternoon, the rains came down in silver sheets, drenching sidewalks, filling gutters, swallowing the city in a restless roar. People rushed indoors, cars splashed through rising puddles, street vendors covered their stands with plastic sheets, and umbrellas bloomed like flowers across the skyline. But in the middle of the flooded plaza, where the wind whipped so hard it bent the lampposts, two kids found themselves in the heart of something life-changing. Lena Hartwell, the 12-year-old daughter of a well-known businessman, had always been adventurous despite using a wheelchair. Her father kept her surrounded with every comfort, every layer of protection he could buy, but Lena lived with the spirit of someone who refused to be defined by anything except her own voice. She had been rolling along the plaza that day against her father's wishes. She loved the rain. She loved the feeling of water running across her hands, the smell of the air, the freedom of it. But the storm came faster than expected. Water filled the cracks of the pavement. The chair wheels slipped, the rain made it impossible to see clearly, and the wind pushed her harder than she could resist. Her wheelchair slid, it turned sideways, and then, it stuck. Deep, firm, immovable. Lena tried to lift the wheels, but the mud was like thick glue. She pushed again and again, her hands shaking. Help, she called. Somebody, please. But the plaza was nearly empty. The sound of the storm swallowed her voice. Her heart pounded. Her breath came fast. For the first time in a long time, fear wrapped itself around her like a cold shadow. Then, through the sheets of rain, someone appeared. A boy. He ran barefoot, splashing through the murky water, drenched from head to toe. His clothes were muddy, his hair dripped rain into his eyes, but he moved with purpose, cutting through the storm as if he were running towards something he didn't dare lose. His name was Marcus Hill, and everything about him looked like he had been fighting the world all day, but he hadn't lost his strength. Bored his heart, he skidded to a stop beside her. You okay? He asked, breathless. Lena nodded, though she clearly wasn't. My chair, it's stuck. I can't move it. Marcus looked around. The water was getting higher. The storm was getting worse. He nodded once, firmly. Okay, I got you. And without hesitation, he bent down, freeing her footrests from the mud. The wheelchair wouldn't budge. He tried again, digging his heels into the ground. Still nothing. He looked at Lena, then made a decision that would change everything. Hold on, he said. Before she could protest, Marcus gently lifted her from the chair and swung her onto his back. She gasped, gripping his shoulders. You don't have to. Yes, I do, he said. We're getting out of here. And he carried her. Mud splashed up his legs. The rain stung their faces. The plaza was nearly a river. But he kept going, step by step, toward safety. Lena held on tight, surprised by how steady he was, how careful he moved even in the chaos. It felt safe. For the first time since the storm began, she breathed. The billionaire in the gray suit, Richard Hartwell, had never been late to anything important in his life. Except today, traffic had frozen the streets. His driver couldn't get through, so he had sprinted through the storm in a tailored gray suit that cost more than most people's rent. But none of that mattered. His daughter was missing. He reached the plaza out of breath, eyes scanning every corner of the flooded space. Lena, he yelled, voice cracking. Lena. Fear clamped his heart, and then, through the rain, he saw them. A boy, soaked and muddy, carrying Lena on his back with absolute determination. Richard had seen a lot in his lifetime: wealth, power, business, influence. But he had never seen something so profoundly simple and human. The boy wasn't doing it for praise. Not for money, not for recognition. He was doing it because someone needed help. Richard ran toward them. Lena, he shouted. She lifted her head. Dad. Marcus slowed, gently letting Richard take her into his arms. Are you all right? Richard asked her, voice trembling with relief. I'm okay, she whispered. He helped me. Richard turned to Marcus, whose clothes clung to him like a second skin, his breath still heavy from the effort. You carried her, Richard said, struggling to process the moment. You saved my daughter. Marcus shrugged, looking down. I just couldn't leave her. Something softened in Richard's chest, something he hadn't felt in years. respect, gratitude, and an unexpected sense that this boy, this complete stranger, had shown more courage in one moment than many adults had shown in his lifetime. A world apart, the rain eventually softened. Emergency crews arrived. Lena was taken to a warm vehicle. Her father stayed beside her, holding her hand. Marcus quietly stepped aside, ready to disappear back into his world. He didn't belong among suits or flashing lights or luxury cars. He knew that, but then a small voice spoke. "Marcus, wait." Lena's hand reached out toward him. "You're hurt," she said. "Your leg, look." He glanced down. In all the chaos, he hadn't noticed he had scraped his knee on a piece of concrete. "It's nothing," he said. But Lena shook her head with fierce determination. "My dad will help," she insisted. Richard blinked in surprise. "Of course, I can have a doctor." "No," Lena said, "I want Marcus to stay." There was something in her voice, something gentle but strong, that made both Richard and Marcus fall quiet. She didn't say why she wanted him there, but both of them somehow understood. Marcus slowly stepped forward. Richard's driver brought a first aid kit. Together, father and daughter cleaned and bandaged his leg. Something about the moment felt healing. Not just for Marcus, not just for Lena, but for Richard, too. An unlikely friendship. Over the next days, Lena wouldn't stop talking about Marcus. She talked about how brave he was, how kind, how he didn't even hesitate, how he treated her like she wasn't fragile but capable. Richard listened silently, unsure how to navigate it all. Lena had grown up surrounded by privilege, protected from pain and hardship. Marcus came from a neighborhood Richard had only driven past with tinted windows. But every time Richard replayed the image of Marcus carrying his daughter through waist-deep water, he felt something shift in him. Maybe the world wasn't as divided as he had always believed. When Lena asked if she could invite Marcus for dinner, Richard hesitated only for a second. Then he said, "Yes, dinner at the HOTWELLS." The mansion seemed like another planet to Marcus. He stood at the door in his cleanest clothes, tugging at his collar, unsure if he belonged there at all. But when the door opened, Lena beamed. "I'm so happy you came." She rolled toward him in her wheelchair, wearing a sparkly hair clip and the biggest smile he'd ever seen. "You didn't have to dress up," she teased. "You said it was dinner," Marcus replied, shy but smiling. Richard stepped forward, extending a hand. "Welcome, Marcus." Truly, they ate a warm meal. Lena told stories. Marcus made her laugh. Richard watched them, astonished at how naturally they connected. Different worlds didn't matter. Money didn't matter. Background didn't matter. What mattered was the way they saw each other. Clearly, honestly, without judgment. The promise. After dinner, Richard walked Marcus to the front steps. "You know," Richard said slowly, "my daughter doesn't let many people get close. But she trusts you." Marcus nodded gently. "She's strong, stronger than most people." Richard looked at him with new understanding. "You know, Marcus, courage isn't something you buy. It's something you show, and that day in the storm, you showed more heart than I've seen in years." Marcus swallowed, unsure how to respond. Richard continued, "If you ever need anything, guidance, help, support, my door is open." Marcus didn't ask for anything. He never had, but for the first time, someone was offering, not out of obligation but genuine respect. "Thank you, sir," he said softly. "For everything." Richard shook his head. "No, thank you." Growth. Weeks turned into months. Lena and Marcus became inseparable friends. He pushed her wheelchair through the park, and she helped him with schoolwork. They read books under big oak trees and talked about dreams, fears, and futures. They grew, together. Lena grew stronger, more confident, more determined than ever. Marcus grew into his brilliance, discovering talents no teacher had ever stopped long enough to see. And Richard, he grew too. He learned compassion could come from unexpected places. He learned listening mattered more than speaking. He learned his daughter saw the world with a depth he had never understood before. And every time Marcus walked through their door, Richard felt grateful all over again. What the storm gave them. The storm had taken a lot that day: cars, property, calm. But it had also given something priceless. A friendship, a bridge between two worlds. A story that would last a lifetime. One act of courage, one moment of kindness, one boy who refused to walk away. That was all it took to change everything. Lena often looked back at the exact spot where her wheelchair had been stuck. The plaza was clean and sunny now. No storm clouds, no mud, just memories. "You know," she told Marcus one afternoon, "I don't think you saved me because I was stuck. Marcus tilted his head. Then why? Because, she said gently, maybe we were both waiting for each other. Marcus smiled. Yeah, he said, maybe we were, a future brighter than the sky. Years later, long after the city rebuilt, long after the storm was a distant memory, Marcus and Lena would still walk beside each other. They would still laugh, still talk, still lift each other, through storms, through triumphs, through life. Because sometimes destiny doesn't shout, sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of a muddy plaza, a summer storm, and a boy brave enough to carry someone he had never met. And sometimes, just sometimes, that first step through the rain becomes the first step into forever. In a world divided by wealth, status, and circumstance, one act of kindness erased the distance between two hearts. Because true connections aren't built by what we have, but by who we choose to be. If this story touched your heart, make sure you subscribe to Black Inside USA for more deep, emotional WA stories every week.